Good evening. Let's read a bit more before I get too tired. Just eat a lot of food. It's 5 p.m. I need a minute to go to my bed. So I'm just laying here and reading a bit.
Chemical warfare. Chemical warfare, CW, involves using the toxic properties of chemical substances as weapons. This type of warfare is distinct from nuclear warfare, biological warfare and radiological warfare, which together make up CBRN, the military acronym for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear warfare or weapons, all of which are considered weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, a term that contrasts with conventional weapons. The use of chemical weapons in international armed conflicts is prohibited under international humanitarian law by the 1925 Geneva Protocol and the Hague Conventions of 1899 and 1907. 1. 2. The 1993 Chemical Weapons Convention prohibits signatories from acquiring, stockpiling, developing, and using chemical weapons in all circumstances except for very limited purposes, research, medical, pharmaceutical or protective. 3. Definition. Chemical warfare is different from the use of conventional weapons or nuclear weapons because the destructive effects of chemical weapons are not primarily due to any explosive force. The offensive use of living organisms, such as anthrax, is considered biological warfare rather than chemical warfare. However, the use of non-living toxic products produced by living organisms, for example toxins such as botulinum toxin, ricin, and saxitoxin, is considered chemical warfare under the provisions of the Chemical Weapons Convention, CWC. Under this convention, any toxic chemical, regardless of its origin, is considered a chemical weapon unless it is used for purposes that are not prohibited, an important legal definition known as the General Purpose Criterion. 4. About 70 different chemicals have been used or were stockpiled as chemical warfare agents during the 20th century. The entire class known as lethal unitary chemical agents and munitions has been scheduled for elimination by the CWC. 5. Under the convention, chemicals that are toxic enough to be used as chemical weapons, or that may be used to manufacture such chemicals, are divided into 3 groups according to their purpose and treatment. Schedule 1 have few, if any, legitimate uses. These may only be produced or used for research, medical, pharmaceutical or protective purposes, i.e. testing of chemical weapons, sensors and protective clothing. Examples include nerve agents, ricin, lysate and mustard gas. Any production over 100 grams, 3.5 ounces, must be reported to the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, and a country can have a stockpile of no more than 1 ton of these chemicals. Schedule 2 have no large-scale industrial uses, but may have legitimate small-scale uses. Examples include dimethyl methylphosphonate, a precursor to sarin also used as a flame retardant, and thiodiglycol, a precursor chemical used in the manufacture of mustard gas but also widely used as a solvent in inks. Schedule 3 have legitimate large-scale industrial uses. Examples include phosgene and chloropicrin. Both have been used as chemical weapons, but phosgene is an important precursor in the manufacture of plastics, and chloropicrin is used as a fumigant. The OPCW must be notified of, and may inspect, any plant producing more than 30 tons per year. Chemical weapons are divided into 3 categories at Smiley 6. Category 1, based on Schedule 1 substances. Category 2, based on non-Schedule 1 substances. Category 3, devices and equipment designed to use chemical weapons, without the substances themselves. History. Simple chemical weapons were used sporadically throughout antiquity and into the industrial age. 7. It was not until the 19th century that the modern conception of chemical warfare emerged, as various scientists and nations proposed the use of asphyxiating or poisonous gases. Multiple international treaties were passed banning chemical weapons based upon the alarm of nations and scientists. This, however, did not prevent the extensive use of chemical weapons in World War I. The development of chlorine gas, among others, was used by both sides to try to break the stalemate of trench warfare. Though largely ineffective over the long run, it decidedly changed the nature of war. In many cases the gases used did not kill, but instead horribly maimed, injured, or disfigured casualties. Some 1.3 million gas casualties were recorded, which may have included up to 260,000 civilian casualties. 8, 9, 10. Men walk in a line with hands on each other's backs. John Singer Sargent's iconic World War I painting, Gassed, showing blind casualties on a battlefield after a mustard gas attack. The interwar years saw the occasional use of chemical weapons, mainly to put down rebellions. 11. In Nazi Germany, much research went into developing new chemical weapons such as potent nerve agents. 12. However, chemical weapons saw little battlefield use in World War II. Both sides were prepared to use such weapons, but the Allied powers never did, and Axis used them only very sparingly. The reason for the lack of use by the Nazis, despite the considerable efforts that had gone into developing new varieties, might have been a lack of technical ability or fears that the Allies would retaliate with their own chemical weapons. Those fears were not unfounded. The Allies made comprehensive plans for defensive and retaliatory use of chemical weapons, and stockpiled large quantities. 13. 14. Japanese forces, a start of the Axis, used them more widely, though only against their Asian enemies, as they also feared that using it on Western powers would result in retaliation. Chemical weapons were frequently used against the Kuomintang and Chinese Communist troops, the People's Liberation Army. 15. However, the Nazis did extensively use poison gas against civilians, mostly the genocide of European Jews, in the Holocaust. Vast quantities of Zyklon B gas and carbon monoxide were used in the gas chambers of Nazi extermination camps, resulting in the overwhelming majority of some 3 million deaths. This remains the deadliest use of poison gas in history. 16, 17, 18, 19. Japanese Special Naval Landing Forces with gas masks and rubber gloves during a chemical attack near Jebi in the Battle of Shanghai. Fritz Haber is considered the father of chemical warfare for his years of pioneering work developing and weaponizing chlorine and other poisonous gases during World War I. The post-war era has seen limited, though devastating, use of chemical weapons. Some 100,000 Iranian troops were casualties of Iraqi chemical weapons during the Iran-Iraq War. 20, 21, 22. Iraq used mustard gas and nerve agents against its own civilians in the 1988 Halabja chemical attack. 23. The Cuban intervention in Angola saw limited use of organophosphates. 24. Terrorist groups have also used chemical weapons, notably in the Tokyo subway sarin attack and the Matsumoto incident. 25. 26. See also chemical terrorism. In the 21st century, the Athis regime in Syria has pursued a strategy of deploying chemical warfare against civilian populations, resulting in numerous deadly chemical attacks during the Syrian civil war. 27. The Syrian government has used sarin, chlorine, and mustard gas in the Syrian civil war mostly against civilians. 28. 29. Technology. Chemical warfare technology timeline. Agents dissemination protection detection 1914 chlorine chloropicrin phosgene sulfur mustard wind dispersal gas masks urine soapable smell 1918 Luizet chemical shells gas mask rosin oil clothing smell of geraniums 1920 S projectiles with central bursters CC2 clothing 1930 SG series nerve agents aircraft bombs blister agent detectors color changer paper 1940 S missile warheads spray tanks protective ointment mustard collective protection gas mask W/Hitlerite 1950 S 1960 SV series nerve agents aerodynamic gas mask W/water supply nerve gas alarm 1970 S 1980 S binary munitions improved gas masks protection fit comfort laser detection 1990 S Novichok nerve agents. Although crude chemical warfare has been employed in many parts of the world for thousands of years. 30. Modern chemical warfare began during World War I. See chemical weapons in World War I. A Swedish army soldier wearing a chemical agent protective suit, Vaxgespide, and protection mask, Spides Mask 90, initially, only well-known commercially available chemicals and their variants were used. These included chlorine and phosgene gas. The methods used to disperse these agents during battle were relatively unrefined and inefficient. Even so, casualties could be heavy, due to the mainly static troop positions which were characteristic features of trench warfare. Germany, the first side to employ chemical warfare on the battlefield. 31. Simply open canisters of chlorine upwind of the opposing side and let the prevailing winds do their dissemination. Soon after, the French modified artillery munitions to contain phosgene, a much more effective method that became the principal means of delivery. 32. Since the development of modern chemical warfare in World War I, nations have pursued a search and development on chemical weapons that falls into four major categories: new and more deadly agents, more efficient methods of delivering agents to the target, dissemination, more reliable means of defense against chemical weapons, and more sensitive and accurate means of detecting chemical agents. Chemical warfare agents. The chemical used in warfare is called a chemical warfare agent, CWA. About 70 different chemicals have been used or stockpiled as chemical warfare agents during the 20th and 21st centuries. These agents may be in liquid, gas or solid form. Liquid agents that evaporate quickly are said to be volatile or have a high vapor pressure. Many chemical agents are volatile organic compounds, so they can be dispersed over a large region quickly. 33. The earliest target of chemical warfare agent research was not toxicity, but development of agents that can affect a target through their skin and clothing, rendering protective gas masks useless. In July 1917, the Germans employed sulfur mustard. Mustard agents easily penetrate leather and fabric to inflict painful burns on the skin. Chemical warfare agents are divided into lethal and incapacitating categories. A substance is classified as incapacitating if less than 1/100 of the lethal dose causes incapacitation, for example, through nausea or visual problems. The distinction between lethal and incapacitating substances is not fixed, but relies on a statistical average called the LD50. Persistency. Chemical warfare agents can be classified according to their persistency, a measure of the length of time that a chemical agent remains effective after dissemination. Chemical agents are classified as persistent or non-persistent. Agents classified as non-persistent lose effectiveness after only a few minutes or hours or even only a few seconds. Purely gaseous agents such as chlorine are non-persistent, as are highly volatile agents such as sarin.